Hey folks, a year and a half ago, Microsoft came out with what they call the SFI, or the Secure Future Initiative. And this was a company-wide initiative that was put into place after a number of major security issues in the Microsoft ecosystem. These security issues stemmed from attacks by Russian and Chinese nation-state threat actors. Some of these attacks involved agencies within the U.S. federal government. Some of these attacks involved Microsoft's own infrastructure. Now, Microsoft put the SFI in place as a direct result of the Cyber Safety Review Board of the United States analyzing all these security issues, under which they released a scathing report that Microsoft had to respond to. Now, recently, Microsoft has made a number of changes to leadership that has a real direct impact on the long-term security of the Microsoft ecosystem. So what I thought we'd do today is we'd have Paul Schnackenburg on the show, and we're going to talk through these leadership changes and what they mean for the long-term security of the Microsoft Cloud. So that and lots more in today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey everyone, it's a new week. That means it's time for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks working in the trenches day in and day out to keep the digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and I'm happy after being on a short 3 or 4 week hiatus that I'm still able to do the intro word for word without having to think too hard about it. So there's that.
Well
with me, I've got Paul. I got Paul Schnackenburg with me today. How's it going, Paul?
I'm good, Andy. How are you?
Doing good. Can't complain. As I mentioned in the last episode, yes, we're back. I apologize for the inadvertent 3 or 4 week hiatus there. But we're back, and you probably noticed we have new music as well for a number of reasons. More future-proofing, licensing stuff for the show. But, we'll just focus on like, hey, cool new music. Yeah, cool. I tried to maintain the funk vibe, but it's more of an 80s type of thing now with a little bit of funk thrown in. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine. So anyway, we got a good show lined up today, everyone. Today, Paul and I are going to be talking about, how do I put it, more Microsoft security. I guess I'm going to say doom and gloom because it doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. There's been some changes in leadership over at Microsoft that have some implications for security across their ecosystem, and specifically the SFI, the Secure Future Initiative. So we're going to get into that. But as usual, we have our regular recurring segments to get to, and I guess I'll start with some housekeeping items. I already mentioned the new music, hiatus, all that, right? But I've got a story that actually came up. I have an episode idea that actually came up in our episode that we recorded with Eric Paul about the consolidation of compute in the industry. The episode that went out last week as of us recording this tonight. And we talked about doing an episode around IT support stories, but for family and friends, right? That's what I call beer money IT, right? Or beer, yeah, IT beer money, right? That stuff that we do for families on holidays, like, hey, my nephew turned my display upside down somehow. Now everything's upside down. How do I fix it? Things like that. And I've got some stories, but I'd love to use this opportunity to share stories from the community as well, too. So what I'm going to do is out on our GitHub discussion boards, I'm going to set up a thread. specifically to capture your favorite, funniest, horrifying family and friends IT support stories. And I would love to share as many of those here on the show as I possibly can. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to tell them on the show, and of course attribute them to your screen name or whatever you want to go by. Right. So be sure to check that out. But other than that, we've got our other regular segments here to get to. We've got our news react segment I'm going to start with here. And this is the segment of the show where my co-host and we choose a news headline that happened in the last couple of weeks that really caught our eye. And I haven't been looking at the news a whole lot lately for a number of reasons. That's kind of good in some cases, right? If you don't want to see all the chaos and insanity that's currently going on in the world.
Yep.
But there is one piece of news in the M365 arena that I've had to look at both from a professional standpoint, but also from a purely personal curiosity standpoint, and that is the news that there is a new M365 enterprise SKU on the market, and that is M365 E7. Now,
Yep.
we've all known in the 365 space that E5 has been, the kitchen sink SKU for the longest time. It was always the thing that had all the things. It was the SKU that always had all the things in it, right? Well, mostly.
Mm, it was
Generally,
it was the SKU that was originally sold as this has everything in it.
correct.
But as often happens with when you put together a suite of things, right? At some point in time, particularly in the software world, it starts off having everything in it. But then there's new features and new suites and new things coming out,
New
and they don't really
add-ons.
fit in there. So today, if you want the whole enchilada, you actually need E5 plus Intune suite plus Entra suite plus vulnerability management add-on for Defender. None of those are included. Plus, if you want to scan OCR in Purview, so you have pictures and images coming in with text in them, and you want to scan those for sensitive data in email or in SharePoint or in Teams, you need pay-as-you-go licensing
Yep.
for that for Azure, and of course, E5 does not contain Copilot. Microsoft 365 Copilot or any Copilot of any kind.
Yep. That is very true. Very true. So I digress, and I will
Sorry.
instead say it was intended to be the kitchen sink SKU. And
Yep.
to your point, I don't know, maybe for a short while it was that, but it didn't
Mm-hmm.
last very long if I had to
Nope.
guess. So,
Nope. It
um,
did not.
and of course, now we have E7, which is E5 with Copilot Cowork, Agent 365, and a couple of other things, basically, right? But those are the big two additions, in my opinion, are Agent 365 and Copilot Cowork. I think the other big thing that was part of that announcement as well was the fact that Copilot is now multimodal. So it's always historically been GPT under the hood, right? But now it has the option of leveraging Claude as well. Now, I haven't looked into it
Yep.
deep enough yet to understand, do I have to go in and change settings, or do I have to make my
Yep.
own agents that can leverage Claude?
Nope. So
Well, see, you got the answer to my question,
I
Paul.
do have the answer to both of those things. So we've actually had Claude as an option in Copilot for a while. Now, you do need to be aware. So in the original form of Microsoft 365 Copilot, it ran on ChatGPT, OpenAI's ChatGPT, various versions as they've upgraded
Yep.
over the years, but it didn't run on OpenAI's infrastructure, it ran on Microsoft
Correct. Yep.
infrastructure in Microsoft's data center with Microsoft control over the data. So that's why Microsoft could promise, if you choose this, you're going to have the data be protected the same as all the rest of your data is protected in Microsoft 365. However, if you go to Claude, which is a slider you need to, well, first the administrator needs to enable it for the entire tenant, and then you, as a user of Microsoft 365, can choose to have that. If you do that, that is not processed in Microsoft's data center. They do have data protection regulatory, whatever contract thingies that tell you what they can and can't do with the data, but it is not the same as Microsoft hosting it. So
Right.
that's number one to be aware of. Number two to be aware of, there is actually other models coming as well. The reason behind the reason. So there's there's one joke in here, of course. We've been in the Microsoft 365 space. We've been joking about E7 for years, right? Like, oh, you got all these
Yep.
extra add-ons, right? So when is E7 coming? Well, here it is. But it is not really what you thought it would be. It does cover, off the top of my head, I think Entra Suite and Intune Suite as well, but I haven't seen whether they have the Defender Vulnerability Management add-on in there, and you still got a purview pay as you
Yeah.
go for the scanning. So it's not like this solves everything. The reason it's in there is because after 2 and a bit years of Microsoft pushing hard, pushing their salespeople hard, they have had about a 3% uptake of Microsoft 365 Copilot in the overall Microsoft 365 space, right? So
Right.
there's what, 450, half a billion users, something like that. We don't know the exact figures. And they've got to about 3% of those have actually gone to Microsoft 365 Copilot. So the reason to put that in there is that now you just buy the SKU and everybody gets Microsoft 365 Copilot as number one. Number two, I think nobody outside nobody outside of Microsoft fanboys would even know what Agent 365 is because it's very new.
Right. Yep. Very new.
So the concept here is that Microsoft sees as, yes, you chatting to your chatbot in Word and Excel and whatever, and helping it, helping you dealing with your emails and triaging your emails and Outlook and whatever, and creating presentations in Word and PowerPoint and whatever. All that's great, but agents is where it's at, right? So Microsoft foresees that for like every user, you'll have 10 or 15 agents in your environment doing stuff for these people, and doing that more autonomously, right? So it's decoupled from a user telling it what to do, maybe starting on triggers, or a user setting it off, but then it goes off and does stuff over hours after that. And to manage those agents, third party and first party agents, you need identity. So we have agent ID in Entra ID. So they get a new type
Yep.
of identity. And that's part of Agent 365. The overall dashboard in Microsoft 365 Admin Center is part of Agent 365, and there's a few other bits and bobs, but it's all about that monitoring. Now, originally, Microsoft was like, well, currently this is for Copilot agents you create, Microsoft Foundry agents you create, and anything you sort of manually assign an identity to, you can do an agent identity manually. But we expect that third parties will follow suit. Well, that is, I'm not so sure, because I just saw that Okta, who's the other big player in the identity space, just released their own agent identity platform as part of Okta. So
Nope.
does that mean that if you're an Entra ID shop, people who write third-party apps will have to write an identity so that when you create an agent based on their solution in your environment, it knows how to set that up in Entra? But if it's created in Okta, does it know how to create it in Okta, or is they going to pick one? And it doesn't seem to be like an industry standard here. It's not like
Right.
if you happen to be using both Okta and Entra that you can say, well, just grab those identities over there for the agents and put them in here. I don't know that that's happening either. So we live in interesting times. We shall see what happens.
In more ways than one, right? Both
Very much so.
geopolitical as well as tech as well. So,
Yeah.
man, I should have talked to you about the E7 stuff to begin with. You know, I had been reading about the Agent 365 stuff because I keep getting asked at work, like, "Oh, what does this mean? You know, what do we do? Do we need to? Is this something we need to have our eye on?" And I look at the price tag for this. $99 per user per month MSRP here in the States. I don't know what it is elsewhere. It's probably comparable, but I only see this being used by the mega enterprises of the world that already
Yeah.
have a fleet of agents that they need help managing, right? So,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. This is not, no small business that I have ever come across is going to be on this plane yet.
nope.
In a few years, maybe, but at the moment, no.
Yeah, agreed. So, anyway, that's my news item. I don't know what you've got, Paul.
Um,
If you got something
so
similar or
in your
something
neck
different.
of the woods, actually, but and
Oh,
this is not exactly a news reveal. I think everybody in tech has heard about this one. So I just wanted to add a little bit of color to the Stryker attack. So Stryker is a medical company. They make lots
yep.
of medical equipment and stuff globally. They've got, I don't know, 50, 60,000 users, something like that. So they're not a small company. And the link we have in the show notes is to Brian Krebs' article on the whole thing. And the key note here is that the way they did the wiping, remember when you're doing a wipe, it's very different than when you're doing a ransomware attack. Because if you're an attacker, you go in for a ransomware attack, you got to make it so that the people can actually decrypt the stuff if you sell them the key, right? And you probably want to hide your tracks a bit as you go in because you want to have enough time in there to actually encrypt all the stuff you want to encrypt. When you're wiping, you don't care about any of that stuff, right? Like you just there to get it
No.
done and you're there for destruction and you don't care about anything along the way as long as it's not hindering that goal, right? So you can move a lot faster. They compromised an administrator that had Intune admin access and they used Intune to wipe every device centrally using Intune's MDM functionality, including a whole bunch of personal smartphones that were enrolled in MDM. So they basically used the system against themselves.
Yep.
Microsoft has an article out where they point out, well, we actually have a technical feature called multi-admin approval. So you've got to have
I
two
was just gonna
administrators
ask.
approve a sensitive action like this. Um, if I'm an attacker from Iran and I compromise one admin account, having to have a second admin account to approve my wipe is probably not going to be a big hurdle along the way here, right?
Yeah.
That's not really what's going to save my bacon. I suspect that maybe they didn't have enough strong security. If it was me and I was the CISO, every administrator in my organization has to have a FIDO key or maybe a device-bound
Yep.
pass key to sign in, and that's the only method they're allowed to use to sign in. I know that gets a little bit tricky around some command line stuff, but still, that might have helped in this situation. But having multi-admin approval, I don't think would have saved their bacon, really.
No, especially if the initial account they compromised was already global admin, like all bets are off at that point, you know?
Yeah,
So I don't know if that's the case or not. Maybe it
me either.
was just an Intune admin, but still, like you said, if they had the capabilities of getting a hold of one admin account, clearly, like you said, there wasn't enough security in place to begin with. So, yeah, that's definitely an interesting one that I've been hearing a lot because there's a major Stryker facility not far from where I live. So I've had neighbors asking me about it and hey, what do you think about that thing that happened? I'm like, oh yeah, I've been hearing about it because it's all over the cybersecurity news. So,
I
anyway,
do want to point out, because there's going to be a lot of people in the US who are listening to this podcast who are in the trenches in a company somewhere. Um, and there's a good podcast out of Australia actually called Risky Business. You might want to look that up and have a
yep,
listen. We'll give them
it's a good
give
one.
them a shout out here. One of the recent ones, they talked about the real the real risk. How big is the risk, right? Okay, so Stryker got hit. We're not seeing hundreds of other companies in the US or worldwide anywhere that supports the US war in Iran. But the realistic thing is that as Iran's military capacity is diminished more and more, it's not going to get to zero, but it is being diminished. Cyber attacks is one of the things that you can still do, right? Like you don't need
Yeah,
infrastructure. You need a few guys with laptops and a bit of know-how, and you can go and do it, right? They don't even have to be in Iran, right? They can be in a neighboring country somewhere, holed up in a hotel. As long as they got some internet connectivity, they can do cyber attacks. So that means we're probably going to see more cyber attacks, however, from Iran trying to do destructive things. However, unless you're working for like a military contractor or something, or you are in other ways like a big company that has a target on its back, I wouldn't really worry about some gigantic wave of cyber attacks. We have not seen any evidence of that, and that's going to that
no.
they even have capacity to do that. And some of their top cyber people have been killed as well. So
Yeah, and I mean, for me, you're gonna go about your daily cybersecurity business, right? You're gonna do your monitoring. You're gonna keep an eye on your logs. You're gonna train your user. You're gonna do all the usual things that you're already doing.
Yeah.
Um, unless, like you said, you're one of those organizations, and if you are a target, you probably know you're a target, right? And at
Yeah,
that
that's
point,
right.
um, you're gonna be taking, if you're in one of those organizations, you are already taking the steps you need to take, most likely, right?
Well, I
So
hope so. I really,
I
really
hope
hope
so.
so.
Yep, I hope so. So
And if you don't
anyway,
know where to start, start with strong identity. That's like step
yes,
one.
very much so. Paul, you and I did an episode about how identity is the new firewall, didn't we?
We did. We did.
I'll have to link that in the show notes, folks. You can check that out. Highly recommended. So, well, real quick, we've got a great segment to get to here for our main segment, but we do have our nerd hour segment. So I'm going to go fast on this one just to make sure we have enough time to get to our core
Yep.
topic. But selfishly, I'll go first for this one, Paul, too. So then we'll hop over to you. So, one thing I've been working on setting up in my lab lately is I have been wanting to have my own hosted Git repos for a while. And I've looked at things like GitLab before and things like that, but I finally settled on. I don't want to say settled because settled makes it sound like I had to give up some things. But actually, I've been tinkering with, and I'm not sure I'm saying this correctly, but I've been calling it Forgejo. Maybe it's Forgejo. It's Forgejo. So it's basically a community fork of Gitea, Gitea, and it's run by a community nonprofit, and it's out of Germany, if I remember correctly. And I have been very impressed thus far running it locally. So, uh, I've today I run everything in GitHub, and I'm going to continue to use GitHub. But I don't know. The nerd in me wants to run local Git repos, I guess. So, and I don't have a good home lab reason to do so other than, hey, it's just cool, right? And I'm an absolute nerd for saying that. And I will now hand over to you, Paul.
I'll tell you very much that I would not want to run my own Git repos at home. See, as soon as you start doing crap like that, now you're responsible for maintaining that thing. Now you got to keep it up to date,
Very
and there'll
true.
be bugs found, and you got to update quickly because if you have that thing connected publicly, then it's going to be an issue. Oh, yuck, yuck.
Oh, there's nothing in this house that is publicly exposed in any
Oh,
way,
good.
shape, or form.
That's good.
Specifically for that reason.
So, so my nerd hour, I really looked around what I've been doing over the last month in nerd space. It's going to be a bit of an odd one, but it's a once-off. Well, maybe in another 15 years, if this podcast is still running, I might talk about the next one. So I have bought an electric vehicle. So as far as
Oh, cool.
technology goes, modern cars, whether they're run by petrol or run by electricity, they're basically computers on wheels. And this has been a really interesting experience. And it was pretty good timing, considering that someone who didn't look far ahead, found out that you can block the Strait of Hormuz, and that's going to affect petrol prices on the other side of the planet. And,
Hmm.
people can't get
Wonder who that
petrol. And
was.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So having an electric car is really nice. I can just plug it into a cable and I'm good to go. So incredible app support. This is probably
Nice.
old news to everybody who's on the call because you've had modern cars. But like I can turn on the aircon 15 minutes before I get in the car, so it's nice and cool when I get out there, which is kind of nice here in Australia. And there's all sorts of very cool statistics that are gathered, etc., etc. So very much enjoying my new car.
Yeah, those are nice. I think my wife's vehicle has something similar. She's got an app where she can remote start it and all that type of stuff. It's hers is still a traditional gas engine, but she does have some of that functionality like that. So
You've
um,
frozen.
I froze. I had a feeling that would happen. So really quick, let's do this instead. For some reason, I don't know. I just had a feeling, didn't I, Paul? I was talking about that earlier.
So this is 2304 or something. Oh, you're back, but you're really
I'm
small.
back. Very small. There
There
we
you
go.
go.
All right. Yes, it wouldn't be proper episode. Well, at least one technical hiccup. Anyway.
There you go.
So yeah, my wife's vehicle is very similar to that, and I've kind of been had an eye on electric vehicles for a while, but I no idea which one I would get. I do know it would not be a Tesla for a number of reasons. So,
Lots of
um,
reasons. You can get those stickers over in the UK. They started putting those on all the Teslas in the UK what they call them, the swastikars. So I thought that was kind of fun.
yes, exactly. So, um, oh yeah, I just remembered there is a
This is not a
Cybertruck that
Tesla either. I'll point that out as well. I do not.
right.
Yeah,
I was gonna say there's
originally
a
when I started looking at electric vehicles like 5 years ago or something, it probably would have been a Tesla, but
right.
not now. That's for sure. No, no Tesla. No Tesla for me.
There, it reminds me of a Cybertruck that's drives around town here, and it has a custom paint job, and it's like American flag all over it. And every
Oh my
time I
God.
see this darn thing, I'm just like, why? Why? Anyway, that's something for us to ponder a different time, I guess. But
I think so. I think
anytime I
that's a
start
different podcast.
that's a different podcast indeed. So, anyway, let's get to our main segment. And again, we are talking about a change in leadership at Microsoft that could have some security implications. And, I think this one takes me back a couple of years. Microsoft added Charlie Bell to their leadership team 2021, if I remember correctly here in my notes. Yes, 2021. And the community largely saw that as a very positive change, right?
Yeah.
He was the executive vice president of security, if I remember correctly, and Bell did a really good job. Did a lot of pushing, communicated well for the most part. But now Bell is out. Nadella has replaced Bell with, and I'm going to butcher this name, I'm sure. Hayeti? Haete? I have no idea. Gallo, I'm guessing, is how you pronounce the last name. Gallot. And they are a go-to-market executive from Google Cloud. And the key word here, go-to-market executive from Google Cloud. Go-to-market executive. Now stepping into the executive vice president of security spot. Right
Yeah.
there. That if you gave me no other information, I would already be concerned,
Yeah.
right?
If you need some more information, you can read the announcement from Satya, and nowhere there does it talk about how good this is going to be for the security of Microsoft products. All it says is we're going to sell lots of security products because she's got a really good track record of selling lots of security products.
And I'm reminded that for a long time now, Microsoft's, again, this is my opinion. I have no data. Well, maybe I have some data that I could argue supports my theory.
Mm-hmm.
But for a long time now, it's very clear that Microsoft sees security as a profit center,
Yeah.
right? And I've had this ethical concern around this for a long time. Paul, you and I have talked about this, not in this podcast, but other podcasts. You and I have had a similar conversation in that
We have.
when I'm a vendor and I sell software that a good chunk of the world uses, I have a responsibility to secure that software when people are paying for it.
Yep.
It gets a little icky when I am then going to say, hey, that software that I sold you, how about if I sell you some other software that secures that software? software. It's just, yes, I'm speaking in generalities, but there's a layer of truth there. You know what I mean?
Definitely. It definitely is. And full disclosure here, two things. First of all, everything I'm going to say from this point on is completely also my opinion based on outside vibes. We don't sit in Microsoft's boardrooms and listen into
Right.
their conversations. We don't have that data. Most people don't have that data, and certainly nobody outside of Microsoft has that data, what they've actually decided. The second disclosure is I have a small handful of clients. I run my own MSP alongside all the other jobs that I do. And one of the things I do for them is I take care of all of their security. And I have standardized on the Microsoft Defender stack. I didn't used to, like years and years ago, there was other antivirus and whatever solutions in place. Now it's all Microsoft all the way. I think it's a fantastic solution. I love Defender XDR and everything it gives me in visibility. Most of my clients also have Microsoft Sentinel rolled out. It's another fantastic product that I really enjoy using. But there is no getting away from the fact that some of the vulnerabilities, so you got to, like, not every breach that happens is because of a software vulnerability in a Microsoft software product, right? So if somebody sends you a phishing email and somebody clicks on a link and then they get compromised, you can't really say, well, that's sort of Microsoft's fault because they let this email come through. Can't really
Right.
say that. But if they take advantage of a vulnerability in Windows 11 and from that they compromise the endpoint or a vulnerability in something else, yeah, then I would rather Microsoft spend the time, energy, and engineering resources on making their code better in the first place, rather than selling me an add-on to protect me in the second place.
Correct. Correct. And that's the key point here, right? And I think this was really highlighted over the last couple of years here. And I'm not even sure I remember all the different breaches and security issues that came up. I know there were Chinese nation state actors involved in one. There were Russian nation state actors involved in another. There was a consumer signing key that was lifted as part of one of the attacks. I don't remember which one. And it got so bad after 3 or 4 of these really bad security breaches that the Cyber Safety Review Board of the United States, which is now a defunct board that doesn't exist anymore, and I have very strong opinions on that will have to be a different episode. But the CSRB, they released a very strongly worded report about Microsoft's security lapses. And it was only then did, and I don't think it was right after either, if I remember right, Paul. It was like a week, 2, 3 weeks after this report that Microsoft came out and finally said that, yeah, you know what? We're going to make security a priority. If
Yep.
there are choices between a new feature or security, you choose security, right? That was the new communication. And then they came out with the Secure Future Initiative,
Yep.
which, was a company-wide initiative to put security first. And you and I, we did an episode of this podcast, I want to say 6 months ago ish, where we gave an update on the
Yep.
Secure Future Initiative. And I haven't seen it go much further after that. Maybe a couple of minor updates here and there, but I haven't seen any big news stories about the SFI since then. Have you, Paul?
No. So Microsoft puts out, or used to, I'd actually have to check whether they put out a recent one, but they put out a quarterly SFI report, right, where
Right.
they detail their progress. See, because basically the bottom line is whether you're a two-person startup or you're 100 and whatever they are, 150,000, I don't even know how many Microsoft are, but 100,000 plus staff. Um, you can either do security right in the first place, or you can be quick to market and then you have to do it afterwards. And what Microsoft was dealing with was basically, call it a decade maybe, when they started moving stuff to the cloud, maybe even a little bit more than a decade,
Yeah.
of technical debt where they had put features before building them secure in the first place. And you do not fix that in a couple of quarters. That's a
No.
big job, and it's a lot of resources, and it's a lot of hassles. And when you do that, you do have to be aware that it's a marathon. It's a long grind, right? And it certainly looked like the SFI reports were heading in the right direction, right? Like they were showing improvements in all the different areas, but they were transparent about the things they hadn't gotten to yet, or was only half done, or whatever, right? So that was pretty good. They also talked about the fact that every performance review of every staff member at Microsoft included how had they contributed to security.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that unless you make that a cultural um, force that has to happen in the organization, it's not going to last. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And my guess, again, this is my opinion from the outside, no empirical data to back this up, is I felt that when Bill Gates had his realization in 2002, and he wrote the memo, trustworthy computing, etc.,
Yep.
it really felt and looked like, and in hindsight seemed to have, because it certainly reverberated through Microsoft for quite a few years, that he had really sort of went, oh shit, we really have to change here because this is really bad.
Yep.
With Satya, it felt very much more like he was dragged into it. The CSRB report was so scathing that I really couldn't just plaster it over with a bit of marketing speak. They actually had to say something and do something. But continuing to fund and push for SFI in an organization that thinks map security good enough is, yeah, it's a worry. It's a worry. You really do have to do that right. And even if you do it right everywhere, you still have legacy, right? And that's one of
Yeah.
Microsoft's challenges. Some other tech companies dodge this bullet, right? Like Apple just says, well, we don't support old stuff, so tough. That's a quick way of fixing it. We don't worry about that old stuff, right? And lots of other companies do. I mean, you have all these as an example, there are several Russian threat actors who specialize in out of support devices, right? Like
Yeah.
they literally find firewalls from all sorts of different vendors that the vendor have just said, well, this is old. We don't support this anymore. And if there's flaws in it, tough. And they're still used by lots of smaller businesses and home users and whatever. And they're a perfect way to get in because they will never get patched, right? And if you can specialize, you can use those vulnerabilities to your heart's content, right? So, yeah, I wish Charlie Bell was still there. I wish Microsoft had more of an actual realization that they needed to keep this up, because we've only been going for what, like a proper SFI is what, a year and a half?
I mean, that's a blink in corporate time, you know?
That's right. That's right. So. And you have a comment here which I hadn't actually heard. So a 2022 report said that internal leaders thought he was setting too high a bar for security. So that's the end of the quote. And our comment is for security at a company that runs half the world's infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I have been one to put sarcasm in my show notes sometimes, but part of it's not sarcasm because I mean, again, I think I said it once in this episode already. When you are the organization that runs half the planet's digital stuff, I mean, you have a responsibility. And I'm almost positive that I quoted Uncle Ben in the last episode, and I'm going to do it again here. With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yep.
So, uh, and you mentioned Charlie Bell. In my notes here, I've got looks like he stepped back to individual contributors. He's not gone unless I missed something.
No.
But it seems like such an odd move to me, to go from executive vice president of security to individual contributor. Maybe it was a personal choice. I don't know. Maybe he was kindly asked to vacate the spot. I don't know what the internal workings are. And again, this is all my opinion. I can just, see what I can see, but I thought that was an interesting move as well.
Yeah, it could also be that he's tired of pushing.
Yeah, that
You
could
push
very well
you
be
push
it
that
too.
rock uphill for long enough, right? And you get not enough support, and everybody else is like, yeah, just get out of the room so we can start just focusing on earning money instead of having to futz around with this silly security. I really don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. The problem is that the engineers who know how bad it is, they need to be listened to, and I think that's the thing. I think
Yeah.
we talked about this before we got recording. Otherwise, I do apologize to the listening audience for repeating myself. But I think back to the days of the space shuttle, right? And you had these engineers saying, well, hey, these O-rings are a problem over here. We really, really do need to take this seriously, right? But the people above them
Yeah.
were, well, we got a pressure to launch every few months. We got to get on with it, right? So it's not that important. And boom, thing goes up, 7 people dead, big investigation. Oh, we let our security culture slip, right? Now, the difference, I suppose, in cybersecurity is that people tend not to die necessarily, right? Which would be even worse, but and maybe a stronger wake up call. But um, yeah, I really wish that Satya had a more of an actual come to Jesus moment and realize that this needs to happen. And it really needs to
Yeah,
happen.
I 90 days or what, not 90 days, sorry, year and a half, 2 years, whatever it's been, post CSRB report, and I'll put a link to the CSRB report in the show notes so you can check it out. I'm surprised they've taken the foot off the gas that quickly,
Yeah.
and I guess part of it is because this, like I said, the CSRB has been disbanded. It's not around anymore, so I guess what it looks like on the outside, again, I have no empirical evidence to back this, but what it looks like is Microsoft said, "Oh, the board that was keeping an eye on us is not around anymore, so maybe the SFI isn't that important anymore." And I
Yeah.
hope I'm wrong. I really do, but that's
Yeah.
what it looks.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope they continue with the SFI. I hope they really continue to push for it. And when some engineer says, "Hey, I can fix these security flaws, or I can do the feature you've asked me to do," the answer is actually, "Yeah, go and fix the security flaws." But I'm not holding my breath.
Right, and I guess all of this that we've talked about so far brings me back to the person they've now hired from Google, right, to fill that spot. What was the a go-to-market executive from the Google Cloud? And so Satya's announcement, like you said, was very, very. We're gonna sell more security products type of thing, which to a degree, he's probably speaking to an audience of investors, to board members. Like, I understand he's got to play that game a little bit, right? But it would have been nice to hear, like, we are still deeply committed to security. We are still
Mhm.
deeply committed to the SFI. Just, uh, it
Charlie has
seems,
done a fantastic work. It has been
yes.
great, and we're going to continue that. That's really important to us. Yeah, that would have been nice to have some of that in there. And that wouldn't have hurt
And
the
it,
investors either, right? Like, they could have
no.
looked at that and go, "Okay, yeah, cool. You're doing the security thing still. That's fine."
And see, that's why it feels like almost an omission, right?
Yeah,
It almost feels like a purposeful omission because
yeah,
it wouldn't have caused any problems to include that in here, which is
yeah.
it's odd. And I'd have to double check the I would have to double check the article. Let me see if I can find it here. I wanted to see when this was announced. Did this come out on like a Friday? So this came out on February 4th. I have to go look at this now because they have a habit of doing that. Okay, February 4th was okay, a Wednesday. So they didn't commit that cardinal sin, right? But they have been guilty of that in the past.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the one. So it looks like the last SFI progress report is from November 25. So December,
So
January, February. So they should be due another one now. I think they come out every quarter, unless it's unless it's every 6 months. It could be every 6 months. Let's not spank them for something that is actually not their
I know,
fault.
right? I'm pretty sure it was quarterly though, if I remember right.
Yeah, it
I'm almost
feels
positive.
quarterly. Um, but the one I see before that is the one I see before that was from April, so that would be about 6 months. So
Yeah.
maybe, uh, yeah, let's say that it's 6 monthly then. Maybe let's say it's six
Yeah,
monthly.
so we
So
might
we'll
not see
see.
one for a little bit yet, assuming they're still doing them, which I hope they are.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, they really were because speaking now as a Microsoft partner and talking to other large Microsoft partners when I deliver training to them as a Microsoft certified trainer, um, you can take a lot from those reports and apply them to your clients, right? Because
Right.
other big clients are looking at similar things, right? Because security is something that really do need to be in there because there can be really bad outcomes like Stryker, like we just talked about, if you don't have your security in place, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure, like with any other large organization that gets hit really bad in the cybersecurity space, afterwards, they become much more secure because the board and the executives goes, yeah, I know you tried to tell us this for the last 5 years, but we didn't take it seriously and it was costing too much and we didn't have that in the budget. Can we just fix it now? I mean, the classic example here is Maersk, the gigantic shipping company worldwide, right? Got hit with
Yep.
NotPetya, brought down the entire organization globally. They lost hundreds of millions of dollars because their systems weren't there, so they couldn't take things off ships and put things on ships. Right, costs them enormous amounts of money. I think we'd be talking billions actually. Um, and they were running old versions of Windows, so security was not an important thing. And they had executives who had said, "Hey, we really need to make this secure." And it wasn't in their quarterly targets, so they didn't bother, right? It just didn't happen. Afterwards, they made themselves really, 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 really secure. Um, so people often ask me, "Oh, how can you use an organization that had a bad data breach like that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, once they've had that bad data breach, they get their shit together quick, smart." And the interesting comment from what's his name? Mikko Hyppönen, who's over at with Secure now, formerly F Secure in Finland.
Yep.
When he goes in to talk to big organizations, they ask him, right? He talks to the CEOs and the executives and whatever, and they say, what would happen if we really had a bad cybersecurity breach? He said, well, your organization will be fine. Your business will be fine. It'll survive, right? You'll need a lot of changes. You'll survive. You won't. You generally are fired. So, you know,
He's not wrong. Oh man. And I that's smart because you're going to appeal to the self-serving nature that tends to be a common trait amongst executives, right?
Yep. Yeah, that works.
Oh,
That works.
oh man. Wow. Wise words, correct words. So I guess when I look at all this, Paul, you know me. I always try to what do our listeners do about this? I
Yep.
I have some thoughts. I mean, uh, a lot of what we talk about on the show seems like lately is more of like a, hey, these questionable things are happening in the industry. You should at least know about them
Yeah.
because, depending on how it plays out, you may need to do something. And to your point, you mentioned that you're a Microsoft partner and you use Microsoft security products for your customers. And, I can, I'd say that, yeah, Microsoft does make some good security tools. Um, the problem is they are increasingly pushing it as a profit center, right? And yes, they are a for-profit business. They have a mandate to make money. Understand that. There's there's a fine line. And for a long time, I feel like they were balancing that line semi-successfully. But now it seems like
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
kind of putting one foot on the ground and, not balancing per se anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I think what's for me, it's going to come down to most organizations' personal comfort level, right?
Yeah.
You may be okay with this. You may be using Microsoft security products in house today, and you might be happy with them, and that's fine. Just understand that as things move forward, right now it's looking like Microsoft is going to start pushing more profit. Again, I don't have any data that says that, but on the surface, it looks like they're going to start trying to push more profit out of security products. I just understand that as you look at stuff, you get pushed new security options from them and things like that. Just be aware that this is going on, and you can choose whether you as an organization are comfortable with that or
Yeah.
not. I don't know if you have any advice you would provide alongside that,
Yeah, well,
Paul.
it's very tricky to give sort of generic advice here, but there's a
It
couple
is.
of things I would think about. The first one is when it comes to cybersecurity, as I said before, the quality of your software is important, right?
Yes.
That goes for all your vendors, right? All your SaaS vendors, all your on-premises infrastructure, operating systems, applications, networking gear, all of that, comes from different vendors. I mean, it's not all Microsoft, right? There's lots of other vendors.
Yep.
So, I don't know, like not picking Fortinet for your security devices would be a great idea because they're getting compromised every second month, right? Um,
Oh, sure seems like it.
so it's like whatever vendor you pick, they're going to be on a spectrum. Now, the reality is, and I'm now talking to us in the trenches, our ordinary sysadmins, right? Maybe we are a manager, but we're certainly not the CEO necessarily. So we have ultimate desire to, or the power to choose things, right? So you got to make
Yep.
recommendations higher up the chain. And I had one client once, just as a quick tangent here, I had one client once, we looked at a networking solution. I investigated both. The boss, who wasn't the boss of that company for very long, he picked the technically less good solution, the more expensive solution, because they gave him tickets to the next game,
Oh, one
right?
of those.
That was the reason, right? That was the reason. And I was completely flabbergasted. I presented the technical reasons, and obviously this one is the one we're going to go with. 6 months later, he was out. New CEO went, yeah, I think we're going to take your advice, Paul, and we're going to go with this networking vendor instead. And I'm like, you beaut, good, let's go.
Never
So,
underestimate the power of a sales guy with season tickets to give away.
that's right, right. So this is exactly the point I'm trying to make here. That um, you need to look at your vendors and you need to figure out whether they're trustworthy or not, right? Not based on their marketing material, but actually based on how they talk about
Yeah.
security and what they actually do and how often they get compromised and their products are compromised, etc. That's number one. Number two, uh, apart from the software quality of all and even the hardware quality of all your infrastructure, the entire system that your business relies on, completely separate to that is also the cybersecurity hygiene steps you take, right? So whether you're using Okta or Entra ID, if you don't have strong phishing resistant authentication for your users, it doesn't matter, right? Like Entra ID could be the most secure thing on the planet, but if you're just using username and password and SMS, MFA, you're still going to be host. It doesn't matter which software vendor you got, right? So I think
Right.
getting back to those cybersecurity hygiene basics is another really important thing to look at. Make sure you
Yeah.
got those in place and you fight for those. And that is a moving target, right? Like it keeps on changing, but that's something that needs to be in place no matter what vendor you're using.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, and a lot of people forget about the foundational stuff like that, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
as
because everybody's chasing. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt this. Everybody's
no, go
chasing
for it.
the the latest hack is exploring a zero
Nope.
day and so, and we're going to protect ourselves, right? And meanwhile, you haven't patched your Windows machines for the last 3 months. I was like, no, 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 no. You get the priorities completely wrong here, right? You
Yep.
need to get the basics right, and it's hard. It's really hard, and it's a grind, right? And it's a thankless grind. Nobody's going to go and, hey, let's celebrate the IT department because they patched all our Windows machines over the weekend, or they patched all our servers, or whatever it might be, right? It's not going to happen. So
Yeah.
sorry.
No. That's a good point. And I was sitting here thinking about, okay, if I'm a sysadmin in the trenches, I use some Microsoft security stuff in my stack today. What's it going to look like when Microsoft comes at me for more revenue, right? Um, I don't know why. I do know why. I was going to say Security Copilot is one of those things I look at from a cost and a pricing perspective that is a perfect example of Microsoft trying to get as much profit out of security as possible. Now, let me put a disclaimer here. Security Copilot is amazing in many ways. It does some really
Mhm.
cool stuff.
It does.
It is obscenely expensive.
Yes.
Obscenely expensive. And it is the costing model is very murky because they have the concept of the SCUs, right?
Mhm.
Forget exactly what the acronym stands for. You might know, Paul.
Secure compute unit.
There it is. Yes, thank you. Um, and it's basically just a collection of compute measurement, essentially. I'm generalizing,
Yep.
but based on what you want to do with it, it's really difficult to determine
Yeah.
exactly how many SCUs are going to be needed for the job, and before you know it, you've burned through $100,000, right? I
Yep.
mean, and in some cases, from what I've read, $100,000 is not an exaggeration. So
No, it's not. Absolutely not. It is very much an enterprise solution today.
it
Now,
is.
the,
It
the
is.
two changes that are coming, maybe, but we haven't seen them yet, is that if you have E5 licensing, and presumably that will include E7 licensing from the 1st of May, when you can actually buy E7 licensing,
Right.
you actually get the number of licenses you have per month divided by 2.5 in SCUs for free. It's included in the license. But the second thing that's happening alongside, so if you are 100 users licensed, you get 40 SCUs to use per month. 40 SCUs is not going to last you that long, but it's not, it's not nothing. But the other thing is that they're swatch they're changing to monthly for the SEUs, because the reason the SEUs are so expensive is because you have to have them running 24/7,
Right.
365, right? So if you want to have like 3 SEUs that are not really going to last you a long time in a medium-sized business during the day, you're looking at $100,000 just to have that happen, right? And
Yeah.
then you might want to add some more SEUs during business hours, et cetera, et cetera. So very, very expensive, very much an enterprise product where enterprises can go, oh yeah, 100,000, that's a rounding error in a budget. Who cares? You know what I mean? Not so for my clients. So once they swap to monthly, we might see that you might be able to buy some SCUs. Like I could see me buying, I don't know, 10 or 20 SCUs at $4 each for a client, and just add that onto their bill and say, well, this gives me enough Copilot juice to last me the month to run some agents and do some investigations and stuff. Um, but we're not there yet, and who knows whether that's going to
Right.
happen or not. So,
Yeah, that'll be one I'm keeping an eye on because I mean, like I said, genuinely, Security Copilot does some very cool things,
oh, it's
very
amazing.
helpful thing.
It's amazing.
Yep.
I literally did a
Yep.
demo 2 days ago for a bunch of MSPs. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, Paul, boy, we've probably beat this dead horse about as much as we can at this stage. But once we once we get another update from Microsoft on the Secure Future Initiative, we'll probably be talking about this topic again at some point in the future. But Paul, I want to thank you for spending some time with us as always. It's good talking to you again, my friend.
Yeah, this was great. It was really good. I did look it up. At the bottom of the latest SFI release, they do say we will keep customers updated with regular updates. So they don't promise anything with their.
So the definition of regular updates is subjective. So it could
That's
it
right.
could be tomorrow, it could be 6 months from now. I guess we'll find out. So, oh, makes sense.
Hmm.
Anyway, well, I appreciate that, Paul, and all of you. Appreciate you spending some time with us today and watching the show. Hope you found some value in today's topic. If you have any of your own comments on today's topic, you can always leave a comment for us at on the YouTube instances of the show or the Spotify instances of the show, or you can also email us at contact@sysadminweekly.com as well too. Or as I mentioned at the start of the show, you can reach us on the GitHub discussion boards as well too. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And I get asked the question all the time, like, why GitHub, Andy? Well, I was going for low barrier of entry. I didn't want anyone to have to create a new account. I'm guessing most people in our space already have a GitHub account. That is the assumption I went off of. And plus, I think everyone is sick and tired of joining yet another Discord server, not to mention all of the identity verification stuff that is currently coming down the pipeline at Discord. And that is, don't even get me on that soapbox because I'll start talking about Discord identity verification. I'll start talking about flock cameras, and then that'll go into, state-sponsored, surveillance, and we'll be here all night. So I'm not going to go down that particular rabbit hole. But anyway, that is the reason for the GitHub discussion boards as kind of our community hangout. So be sure to check that out. Put that in the show notes. Otherwise, you can find all of the links associated with the show at www.sysadminweekly.com. With that, we'll let you get back to your week. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you again next week for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one, folks.